Welcome to Athlete Optimization. Reimagine. This is the Restoic podcast.
Welcome back to the Restoic podcast. Ian, I know you had a chance to catch up with Tianna Bartoletta, who happens to be a two-time Olympian, three-time gold medalist in track and field, and is also preparing for Tokyo Olympics next year. Considering I wasn't able to be on the call, would you be able to fill me in on some of the highlights of your conversation?
I would love to. This conversation touched on so many different areas, but I guess the one thing I'll say to you is that she really embodies, I think, a lot of what we talk about when we say a mindful athlete, because she takes these practices that she does in regards to mental skills like visualization and meditation, and it's a way of life. And she's been able to use them not only in the biggest moments, and so in preparation for her gold medal long jump and just kind of getting herself centered and focused, and we talk about that, but then also just in life, just day to day, just those small decisions that add up to really what you walk away with at the end of each day, right? And it's just that idea of 1% better. You know, if you have a stumble, if you have a fall, take it with grace and keep going. And so I could keep going with this introduction, but I won't. And we'll just get everybody right to the conversation. But Danny, was there anything else that you wanted to ask or mention?
No, she sounds like an incredibly well-rounded individual, and we're looking forward to listening.
It's going to be a great time. I promise everybody that. And for all you new listeners, be sure if you do go to restoic.com, information is in the show notes, that you use promo code podcast, PODCAST, and you're going to unlock exclusive savings for our podcast listeners. Everybody enjoy this conversation with Tianna.
Thank you for having me. I am speaking with you from sunny California in the Bay Area near San Francisco.
There you go. And are you currently training for Tokyo? How have you been spending this time with everything going on in the world today? How have you been trying to maximize this time at home as well?
Yeah, I am still training. Can't necessarily call it for Tokyo, seeing as that has been postponed a year, but definitely, getting out to the track and staying in what is now my garage gym, and really just trying to stay in shape so that I don't get too far behind, because it would be really easy to throttle down and kind of take a little vacation right now with not much to look forward to in terms of competition. So just trying to keep the schedule the same so that my future self will thank me for staying on top of it right now.
It's an important message, and I'm glad that we're starting the conversation with this, because it's a lot of the questions and the feedback that we get that's very positive is hearing from people who are listening saying, wow, okay, this is how other athletes are maximizing this time, or this is how I can try to approach this time. Because I think the reality is, when this all started to happen, we all collectively were just kind of, on the edge of our seat waiting to see it throw off everybody's routine. But now there is an element to this that it has become a little bit of a new normal. So either your routines during this time could have been improved and may have become, more positive. You may be maximizing this time, or you could have fallen into some bad habits, which is totally fine and acceptable, by the way. But I just think it's powerful to hear how someone like yourself has spent this time. And so you mentioned that you're training, you're trying to keep it as similar as possible, but are there different things that you're starting to incorporate because you are just at home and you have all this new time that you maybe didn't have before?
Yes. So I looked at it. I'm going to be honest and say I freaked out for maybe 3 or 4 days at the beginning when this happened. I was training at Cal Berkeley. They padlocked the track. They closed the gym. And, I'm looking at it like, oh my gosh, nothing that I need in order to pursue the defense of my Olympic title is available to me. What do I do? Do I just give up? And I'll be honest, I had a very, depressed, like grieving kind of reaction to that for a few days. And then I rallied. And part of that rally was, wait a minute, you've just earned 12 more months to prepare. You've just earned 12 more months of time to eradicate any of those little weaknesses that we don't always have the time to pay attention to. Like for me, it's like my ankle stability. I have strong ankles, but they could be better because I keep spraining them. So all of these little things like core strength and hip strength, I have all the time now to work on that so that when the opportunity comes back next year, I'll be even stronger. So it's just more time to prepare and hone my abilities rather than looking at it as a delay that's disappointing.
See, and you touched on a really powerful, I think, shift in mindset that for some people is difficult and takes a lifetime to master. And that is just pulling that switch of taking a potential negative situation and finding the positive in it, trying to go towards that light, trying to go towards the opportunity wherever that exists, even if it's in just the worst situation in the world. And I love that. And I would be curious, is that something that you've experienced and done and just kind of way you've carried yourself your whole life, or was that something that you had to learn along the way?
I absolutely had to learn that because doing professional sports, doing sports period is difficult. Making a living from being an athlete is really, really difficult. I mean, you are rising and falling with every performance, every win, every loss, So you really have to get really, really good at controlling your mindset and your mentality, or this can kill you. And I don't even mean that dramatically. I mean, literally, there is, a whole epidemic of Olympians who commit suicide because we really struggle with this idea that, we aren't more than our sport. So it's just really important that you take control of your mental game. With that said, the power of reframing everything so that you can just turn it into something you can use as fuel is going to keep you for as long as you want to be in sport and in life, really, but particularly in sports. You have to learn how to reframe every situation in a way where you can extract something useful and productive from it that can propel you forward. And I had to learn that in order to keep overcoming, all these little setbacks that have accumulated in my career over 15 years as a pro, in order to keep going, in order to keep putting one foot in front of the other. So I had to learn it. It took a while, but I'm really good at the reframe.
It's just so powerful, reframing exercises and just practicing it, because it's like anything else. The more you practice it, the more you train yourself to see these specific situations that are arising in this way, it's going to become second nature. It takes time. It's not just going to, you flip the switch and then it's there. But I think some people are maybe more predisposed to that sort of outlook, whereas others really struggle with it, So it is just, it's one of those challenges. And I mean, you touched on something really powerful. And I do want to spend a good portion of our conversation discussing your Olympic experience, your training, and also what you're up to now. But I think a great place to potentially start our conversation is going all the way back to where you grew up. And I would just love to hear a little bit about your childhood and maybe your high school. Where did you spend your time? Where were you living?
I am from Elyria, Ohio. It's about 20 minutes west of Cleveland, Ohio. And it had a population of 60,000 people. We had one public high school. And, everybody knew everybody here. So it was a very small town. I didn't start to play organized sports until middle school. We were active as kids, but we never did any summer clubs or travel teams. Once I got to middle school, I played volleyball, I played basketball, and I thought that I was going to become a wrestler because my dad was a wrestler. He was a wrestling coach, and I am 100% a daddy's girl. So it just was a natural thought to me that I would go to the wrestling team come spring. My mom, though, she totally vetoed that idea, even though my dad was the coach. And that is the only reason I ended up at the track and field interest meeting, is because my mom vetoed me going to the wrestling meeting. And so we really have her to thank for me being a track athlete at all, because I was completely uninterested. And on the first day of track practice, we're standing in our parking lot because we didn't even have a track. I mean, we ran circles around the parking lot from one car to another car. That's like literally what the workouts were. I learned about track for the first time that day. My coach was my social studies teacher, and she said to everyone, "Okay, welcome to the first day of track practice. If you want to do track events, stand over here. If you want to do field events, stand to my right." And I raised my hand and I said, "Does track events just mean running?" And she said, "Yes, that means running." And I said, "Okay." And I went to her right because I was completely uninterested in running at all. So I chose field events thinking that I would never have to run. And I was poorly mistaken.
It is
But
track
that's how
and
it
field.
started.
Yes.
Yep,
Okay.
track and field. That's where I learned about the long jump. I picked the long jump because it seemed like the event that was the most fun and required the least amount of running. And it's just really funny when I tell this story. Like, that's how I chose the event I would eventually become the Olympic champion in. There's no more profound story than that. Like, I didn't want to do what seemed harder.
Is that, and it's funny, you said that story and it hit home because I'm someone that played sports my entire life, but the one thing I always hated was running. I just didn't like it, and you have to do it in practice, obviously. Whatever you're doing, you're gonna be running. And if you're competing and you're running, that's one thing. But just the running
Hmm.
to run was never something I look forward to in gym class. You have your mile time every year when you're growing up in PE, and it's like that was a
Yeah.
day that you dreaded. So was that just similar to you? You just didn't enjoy running? Like what gave you the passion to start
Yes.
saying, "Wow, I'm actually pretty good at this," and give it like all your everything? I mean, because you committed to it clearly. So what was that decision, that turning point?
Well, I am still very much that young kid because to this day, I have friends that run the marathon. I have a friend, Alex, that does ultra marathons. And every week, when he tells me, oh, I just did 22 miles today, I'm like, but why? Why are you doing? Why would you do that? What are you thinking about? How do you do, like, I'm just like, I can't wrap my mind around that. The thing that turned me into a sprinter, because I will say sprinting and running for me are two very different things. I can be done in less than 23 seconds. That's very different from running a mile. And to this day, I mean, I'm supposed to run a couple miles a week just for active recovery. And it's like, you would think that I was walking the green mile. That's just how horrible getting prepared to run a mile is for me. So I think when I know that it is directly conducive to me being awesome or better at sprinting or jumping, I'm all for it. But if
Mhm.
it's like anything long, I'm like, oh my gosh, no.
Wow, that's so funny to hear. I'm glad that we got into that. And in prep for this, I saw that we probably graduated honestly around the same time. So I was 2003, but that
Yeah,
means
same.
so there you go. Same age, same type of experience in terms of the era we grew up. We saw the internet come in to be what it's become today. And I feel
Hmm.
like for the younger generation today, social media, I mean, this is all they've known. I got social media. I remember the first time figuring out about MySpace and you find out about Facebook and it's like, wow, and now it's just, I mean, these kids, it's second nature, right? And I think it can be something positive. You can go to social media and there's people that do this for sure, that they go for the inspiration, they go for those really
Hmm.
uplifting accounts they follow. But then there's other people that just get sucked into it, right? And I would love to know how you've navigated this new world that we're in as it relates to social media and your training and being just such a champion in track and field.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I remember like when I did anything at a big meet in high school, you wait for the dial up, you put your name into the search engine, and maybe after 5 minutes, a picture of you at the event loads up. And now it's like just we live in this instant world of information. It is a really hard time to lose in. And I was thinking about this the other day because social media is used by so many people as simply the highlight reel of their lives. It's not always a full picture of what any of us are doing. And therefore it makes it really hard to be an athlete that doesn't win all the time. And to be honest, none of us wins all the time unless you're like Usain Bolt or Michael Phelps. For the most part, losing is an inevitable and normal part of your athletic history, but social media can make it seem like it's the end of the world if you lose, or that other people aren't losing. It's just you that's losing. And so I really try to use social media as a way to just be that space where it's like, hey, I've got 9 medals, but I face planted in my long jump workout last week. I ran the worst 100 and I'm still getting out here. And guess what? Now, today at this training session, I PR'd by 10 seconds. It's everything. Like, you have to embrace the entirety of what it takes to train, the entirety of what it means to win and lose. And I think that's lost a bit because of how social media has evolved and how people are using it. But you can create that space. Like you said, you can choose who you follow, you can choose what you consume, But if there's anyone trying to figure out how to share their story, be mindful that you're sharing all of it, because it's a lot easier for me, speaking from my own experience, when I have been honest about the journey and the lead up, whether I win or lose, I don't dread logging on to Twitter the next day because I was just myself, and it is what it is. And I just want to make sure people do that for themselves.
And I think it's just important to have these conversations, in my opinion, because I remember when Instagram was really, really on and popping, I found myself single and you're on Instagram and it's just like you would jump off and then, you just have to have your phone by your side. And the next time you went on, you almost wanted to catch up to where you left off. And it was just like, I caught myself. I distinctly remember I caught myself doing it one time. I was just like, what is this? What is this feeling? What is this temptation? Like, how have I given so much of my energy into this device that means absolutely nothing at the end of the day? And it's like anything, because then on the flip side of that, someone could say, well, it's how you use it, right? It's like you can use it for good or you can use it for bad, but it's just such a tough thing to learn. And so I don't know. I mean, do you have any tips? I think would be one thing before we get off this topic of social media that I'd be curious to hear from your perspective, whether that's just setting your phone on silent or putting it in your room before bedtime or anything like that you found to help you just try to limit maybe your amount of time spent on devices.
Yeah, I think you should do your best to limit your screen time and use that. If you have an iPhone, it's already a setting on your phone. It'll shut down your apps after a certain period of time or after a certain time of day. Another thing that all of us could benefit from is just digital detox, period. Just like ditch the devices. I know that sundown can be early in some places, but I really try to make sure that once the sun goes down, my devices are gone. I've had to stop using my cell phone as an alarm clock. So that way I could charge my phone in a place I'm not sleeping. So outside of my room, and use a different alarm clock to wake up. Because what I noticed was happening is like I would just roll over and, at night when maybe you wake up for a brief second and then you look at your phone and then suddenly you're in this rabbit hole all over again and it's 1 a.m. and you're wide awake scrolling. So even tricks like that, just ditch the phone and actually get an alarm clock so you're waking up on time still can do a lot for, one, how you rest physically, but how you recover mentally as well.
So powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And I have to ask the follow-up of what type of alarm clock are you working with? Is it one of those really loud, like rattle bell ringing ones? Because that's one of my biggest pet peeves in life is someone who has like the loud alarm clock setting when you're waking up. Like, I just want to like gently be woken up, not just screamed out of bed, but I would be curious.
I don't want to be scared to death. I don't want to start my morning terrified. I don't. So I have a Philips sunrise clock. And so basically, I'll give you an example. My alarm clock is set for 5:30 in the morning. So at 5 o'clock, this clock will start to light up and it will simulate a 30-minute sunrise. And so what will happen is most of the time, because your room suddenly is full of all this light, you wake up well before the alarm would actually go off. But if by chance I don't wake up by the light, then I can select the sound that it plays, and mine is Navajo flutes and birds chirping. So if it's not the light of the clock that wakes me up, then I wake up to the sound of flutes and birds. So it's very gentle. And when I wake up that way, I'm set up much better than that horrible traditional alarm clock sound, for sure.
Oh my gosh. If they're not one of your sponsors, I'm going to have to hit them up because you just sold me. So, I mean, you made a commission right there, like I need that in my life. It is so true because it's easy to default back on your phone, especially if you're traveling and stuff too. Like you're not going to probably lug that in your suitcase and all that. So you can fall into bad habits. And I don't know, I think just shifting gears a little bit into your Olympic career, I was in one of the articles I came across in preparation for this chat, it was talking about the lead up into the Rio Olympics in 2016. And this is where you happen to land your personal best in the biggest stage of all, gold medal, long jump champion. And I'd just be curious, like, how did you approach your training for that event? Because you're obviously a very successful person and you've achieved success at all levels, you know? And so you get to the Olympics, you're there, you're walking out that first day. What did that just whole experience of getting and being at the Olympics, what did that feel like? And I know you were there previously, but I'm skipping around a little bit, but can you just tell a little bit about your Olympic journey and what that experience was like, and then setting up into 2016 where you made that long jump? I would love to get into that story because I know there's so much more behind that I want to make sure we share with our audience.
Yeah, so making the first team was really surreal for me because just 9 months before, I was trying to quit the sport. I was trying to leave the sport. It wasn't going well. I had returned to school to with the hopes of finishing my molecular and microbiology degree so that I could just go ahead to medical school and put this whole track and field thing behind me. And if I had my way, nobody would ever bring it up and talk about it ever again. That's where I was at. And so to do that, I had hired a new coach. I was going to practice every day. I was just trying to get good enough to continue to earn enough money to make tuition to stay in school, to pursue that plan B of mine. Well,
How
all of
interesting.
the effort and intention actually ended up working towards making me an elite athlete, an elite sprinter. And I ended up making the Olympic team because for 9 months of that deliberate, consistent effort from focusing on what I thought was like a way out of the sport was actually my way back in. And so making that first Olympic team, I didn't even make it as a long jumper. I didn't try out for that. I made it as a sprinter. And as you know, because we started the conversation this way, I did not consider myself as such. It was something I never actually wanted to do. I didn't want to run. And now here I am on my first Olympic team in the 100. And so it was really just a wow moment because it really does shine a light on the power of just being intentional. Even if you don't absolutely know for sure what you want from it or what the outcome might be, the fact that I was intentionally going to practice every day and putting in effort every day added up. So none of that was wasted. And that was really important to me because we get to a place we don't always know. We're not always clear. And it's nice to know that sometimes it's just enough to keep showing up every day. So with that said, I made the
Yeah.
Olympic team.
Wow.
And I was just like, it was unbelievable, but also I knew that it was all because of my effort. And I don't know how to describe it, but it was just a lot of work into we don't always get to see our work manifested or validated. And that's what the Olympics feels like when you make it.
You're just like, I did it. I'm here. Yeah. I definitely get that. And just going back to something you said a moment ago, that grind that you clearly put in to get you in that space to make it back. What was that like day in and day out? Because those are decisions you're making on a daily basis to do the things that you had to do. And I know there were days that you probably didn't want to. You didn't want to get up early or you didn't want to do the extra work, but you clearly did. And there was huge rewards for having done so. Even if in those moments you couldn't picture everything that was to come, that's just cause and effect in effect right there, right? I mean, you
Right.
put in the work and then things are going to happen. The ripples are going to go out there and you may get somewhere completely different to where you envisioned, but a lot of times it's going to be somewhere very positive just for taking that first step, which is some of the hardest stuff to do. So what was just like your daily practice, just staying in that mindset?
Yeah, honestly, it was just like when my motivation would run out, my discipline would take over because the reason I was out there was important to me. Like it was really important to me to go back to school and to honestly turn my back on track, which is so ironic when I tell this story, but that was really important. I was really like committed to moving on, but using track to fund it. And I say that because motivation will run out. You are not going to feel awesome every day. But if you have a why that you are really serious about, that you are passionate about, when the motivation runs out, your discipline will take over because there's going to be a part of you that will not allow you to give up on that why or that dream, even when you're not feeling it. And that's kind of where I was at every day. And you're right. It's a million little decisions. For me, it was a million things. Do not eat McDonald's. Do not do this. Do not eat the Twizzlers. Let's go to practice. One foot in front of the other. Let's do the warm up. Okay, now that we've got the warm up down, let's do the sprint drills. Like just a million little decisions.
And speaking of deliberate decisions, getting back to that 2016 games, I read and I was kind of taken back. So I just got to ask you, like, is this even true? But that you had deliberately fouled your first jump in order to show your coach how fast you were running. Is that a true story?
True story. Because my coach was based in the Netherlands. And although I lived in the Netherlands for several months throughout the year, I had returned to the States for about 2 months before the Olympics. So we hadn't seen each other. He didn't know what I was at home working on and how I was preparing myself for the Olympics. And so when we came to Rio, that was the first time we had been reunited in 2 months. And there was only one way I could show him how ready I was for this moment. And I wasn't scared. I was fearless. I said, look, it's your job to get me on the board, and I'm going to show you how I'm running tonight. Pay attention and make the adjustments. Because you have 3 jumps, and I really trusted in myself. I knew that I would be able to get a fair jump in that would advance me to the finals. So it wasn't as risky to me as it seems to throw away the first jump. I knew that if we nailed that together, the payoff would be huge. So yeah, that's the true story. And it was risky, but I was right. I bet on myself and I won.
And it's never a bad decision to bet on yourself. It really isn't, and it's like, because even if you lose, you're going to learn. And from that learning, you can take that with you to the next thing. And it's, we're speaking about mindset. That's a lot of obviously what we focus on at Restoic, but just generally speaking, as it relates to that moment and competing and trying to take home that gold medal. What was your mindset going into that? Was there anything that you were practicing in terms of mental skills, visualization, any breathing exercises? Did you have some sort of daily practice or just some way that you were pumping yourself up? I would love just to hear about, again, just your mentality, I think, going into that.
So I was already dabbling in meditation and I was consistently practicing yoga. So I did understand the importance of, dropping into stillness and getting the mind still. And visualization for me was huge. But there was another thing that I had to work on because I'm actually the second shortest jumper in the world in terms of height, but I'm the fastest jumper in the world. So I knew that based on, the physics of the event, that me running as fast as possible was my advantage. But also if I could get enough height at takeoff, that those 2 things together, I would win. And so I spent a lot of time working on how can I be so fearless that I can run as fast as I can run, and then in a split second, transfer all of that speed into vertical lift without being too afraid of the speed to slow down, to give nothing away. And so I spent a lot of time meditating on, I am ready, I am calm, I am strong, I can fly, just mantras and repeating that while visualizing the takeoff. And when I was on the runway, the thing people always ask is like, how did you feel when, Brittany took the lead? And my answer is, I had no idea she took the lead. I had no idea what the lead changes were or who was in what place, because it did not matter, because none of their results had any influence on what I would do when I stepped on the runway to execute my run. And so on YouTube, you can look at it and you can see that I'm talking to myself and I'm going over my execution checklist and I'm speaking basically mantras and life into my body, like, okay, this is what we need to do. And I just did it. It was like a rehearsal. It was time to just do all the things that I had been rehearsing over and over and over. And because I had done so much of that work outside of that moment, in that moment, there was nothing to do but to do it.
Wow. Yeah, your subconscious, it's amazing. It's amazing to learn that your subconscious does not know the difference between fantasy and reality. So you can program your mind in that way to where you're going to have that feeling of deja vu. when you're out there, when
Mm-hmm.
you're performing. And, these are lessons that whether you're an athlete competing at the highest level in the Olympic Games at that huge stage, or just someone going through your life, if you're a salesperson, et cetera, like you can use these practices to help basically feel your way to where you want to be, right? I mean, because you're closing your eyes and you're there. You're feeling it fully, what it's going to feel like when you're there. You can see out of your eyes that sensation that you're going to have. And those feelings are something that you can always return to as well as fuel to help you get to where you want to get to again, So I think it's a practice that's going to carry you throughout your athletic ventures for sure. But also, I mean, a big thing that we always talk about is it's locker room to boardroom with all these mental skills, because you're going to be able to
Oh,
apply them
absolutely.
in life. And it's like that's the cool part. But that's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. And I also saw that in 2017, it sounds like, so just on the heels of all this, you did have some personal difficulty going on in your life, and you had shared some personal thoughts, honestly, about you had this dialogue going on in your head, right? Where you just felt like you weren't going to be the same without this person that was in your life. And so you needed to find this moment to be able to bounce back. And without getting too
Mhm.
personal, you can share whatever you like here, but I would just love to know what that bounce back was like. Because I think, that's that thing, that's that moment, that gut check that we've all had, right? All of us in our own
Mhm.
ways have had this, to where it's like, you hit this wall, you hit this bottom, like, and it's so easy to get stuck there in that position. But I think everybody has a really unique story and something valuable to add in terms of how they were able to get themselves out of that. So that's what I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, I was just really broken by everything that was happening to me off the track. And I think all of us have sometimes had a relationship or a person, even a friend, or maybe even a parent who's just like, none of this would happen without me. Somebody who just takes a lot of credit for the work that you're doing. And so when that person is no longer around or no longer in your life, you are kind of left wondering, were they right? And so I spent a lot of my training after that, like really trying to prove that they weren't right, which isn't actually a positive focus. So, in order to have that breakthrough, in order to regain that control over my effort and my performance, I just went back to the basics. I started to remind myself that physics doesn't care about any of these things. Physics doesn't care about my heartbreak or, if I feel good today. Like force equals mass times acceleration every single day, no matter who, no matter what. And I really was able to find strength in being that nerdy about my performance, because all that meant that all I had to do was get over myself enough and my feelings enough to just execute. And it really freed me up to just get out there and do exactly what I needed to do. I could deal with all of my emotions and freaking out and all of that after the fact, but in the moment, physics didn't require or need any of those things for me to do well. And I really just stripped all of that extra baggage that we tend to carry into the arena with us, tend to bring with us into practice, stripped it all away and laid bare just the effort and the execution required to do what I needed to do. Because at the end of the day, it takes what it takes, right? And you're either going to get out there and do it or you're not. And that's really how I was able to break through that barrier.
Wow. Yeah. It's huge. And part of what I heard in your response was the fact that you made it personal. It's like you had to put it into terms that were going to resonate with you. And I think that's an
Mm-hmm.
important part of this self-care journey, if you want to put it like that, but just like personal wellness, however you want to approach it, is not
Mm-hmm.
everything's going to work for everybody. Like what works for one person is not going to work for the next person. But if you put yourself out there, like we were chatting about earlier, and you just start trying stuff and you start walking down this path and you start saying, what does meditation feel like? What does yoga feel like? Is this helping me? What are the things that I'm naturally drawn to? There's
Mm-hmm.
so many resources out there. So, as it relates to, I think, yoga and meditation, that was an area I wanted to dive into a little bit. What is your current practice, and how do you, and did you work that into your overall training as you were approaching those Olympic Games?
Yeah, my overall practice. So meditation is key. Um, when I'm on it, I meditate every day for at least 15 minutes a day. And I'm not always perfect. Sometimes it's just 5 minutes, but that is the goal and it's a daily practice. Yoga, um, I try to do at least 4 times a week. Yoga started for me as just a counter to my training because the training was so intense that I could never unwind from practice. So I wasn't sleeping at night. It was just, I wasn't recovering. And so, what is the point of doing all that work if your body can't recover enough to seal the work and improve and, get that overcompensation back from all that training? So, yoga started out as that for me. And as I was, doing restorative yoga, which is basically the yoga with all the props, you don't have to move too much. Gravity does it for you. And it's a lot of slow breathing, which is absolutely what athletes who run around all day need at the end of a long day. I started to just be more aware of my body. And that awareness led me to wanting more. And I integrated vinyasa flow yoga into that practice, which became a moving meditation for me, but also taught me how to feel what my body was feeling, how to listen to what my body was trying to tell me. And so once I started practicing yoga, I not only became super aware of my body to the point where a coach could give me a mental cue about changing my shin angles and I can do it immediately. It required no video, no effort, just the thought because I had cultivated that ability on the yoga mat. I also stopped getting injured because I could feel, if I was pushing myself too far, I could also feel when I could go further. Just my relationship with my body changed. And that does wonders for you mentally when you are so familiar and so comfortable in your body. You can walk to a starting line and know exactly what you can do, or maybe not know exactly what's going to happen, but be ready to go out on your shield because you know that you're prepared for this moment. Yoga and meditation do that for me.
And I mean, it also, because you're talking about both practices, I have gotten so bad with the birth of my son, and I can't put any blame on him because it's on me to make it happen. But my yoga routine just went down the toilet when that guy came around, because that was when I used to be able to, with those extra hours, just get that yoga meditation. And I just got to say, I mean, I felt absolutely amazing combining those two things to just my everyday training because of the consciousness that it brought me just throughout my day, let alone, so it's like you have that experience, right? You're doing the yoga, you're doing the meditation, but then the rest of your day, you're operating on a different level. You're more present, and it speaks to mindfulness. And so I would just love to know, I mean, when you're going throughout your day, you've talked about reframing exercises, you've talked about how you talk to yourself and just the affirmations that you use, but are there any final tips that you would just want to impart on any athletes that might be listening? Because I think the reality and something that we're facing a lot is that for most that we talk to about these subjects, it's the first time they've ever tried or even considered any of this, right? I mean, if you're a high school athlete, your training is the weight room, and then you play and you practice with your friends. That's about it. There is the rare, someone who's outside of that, right? There are outliers for sure. So I'm not going to just make a blanket statement, but I think, when as it relates to yoga, you talked about starting with restorative, for example. It's like, that's a way that you can get in there. Just try to understand how it's going to benefit you. With meditation, start with 2 minutes, then go up to 3 minutes, and then 4, then 5. Like, those little things, I think, can really help, and they'll create this practice that when you see the benefits you get from it, you're more prone to stick to it. So I wonder if you have any tips that you could impart on how you kind of incorporated that into your overall routine.
Yeah, I think you are absolutely right. You baby step it in. And when I was first getting into meditation, it was 2 minutes because I couldn't even reel my mind in those 2 minutes. And then I would spend a week at 2 minutes. And then the next week I'd add another minute. And, now I'm at 15 and sometimes I can do 30 minutes of sitting. But one of the things I would just suggest to anyone listening is just begin. Don't worry about what it's going to be like or what it's going to feel like. It's all of this, even going to training and doing a workout, it's almost experimental. You don't know what it's going to feel like until you do it. And so, yeah, just begin. Don't be afraid to just start. And then from there, you tweak in a way that suits you, that serves you well. But the benefits are just huge to be able to be proficient at meditating, or yoga, which is essentially just a moving meditation. Yoga isn't about like who can hold the headstand for the longest. It is really just about how can you control your breathing and your mind in such a way that you can control your body? Doesn't that sound like sports performance? It is.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's self-mastery, in a lot of ways. And
Yes.
it's like, it's that self-work that I think for a lot of people, it's not that they don't want to do it. It's just they don't know where to start. Right. And I think so.
Hmm.
What you're saying is powerful because it's like, just start. It's okay not to know. It's okay if you just kind of stumble your way through it, because in time you will figure out what that looks like for you, what your personal wellness routine looks like. And so I really love that message. And honestly, I couldn't think of probably a better place to end our chat. But before we do, I want to make sure I give you an opportunity to talk about your passion project, Sprintrunjump, which just sounds so cool. And I want to make sure you share that with the audience, along with any social medias or anything else that you would like to mention.
Yes, I just want everyone to know about sprintrunjump.com. It's a website that I built for kids who grew up like me, maybe in a small town or with not a lot of information or access to elite camps, because not knowing what you don't know could be the difference between improving enough to get those scholarships or go away to college. And so there on that website, you will find videos of sprint drills and training programs and ab workouts and meal plans and just anything you might need to support you in your journey of becoming a better athlete. So I'm really proud of that project, and I keep adding to it almost weekly. So keep checking back there.
Perfect. And then what about your social media? Is there a place that anybody can check you out and follow you, or do you just want to send everybody to Sprint Run Jump?
No, you can follow me on Instagram at Tianna.Bartoletta. I'm also on Twitter at Ti Bartoletta, and on Facebook as Tianna B, which is Bee, like Bumblebee.
There you go. There you go. And then right at the beginning of our chat, so I know, well, first of all, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it still Tokyo then? Because I heard you say like, well, it's Tokyo 2021, and it's like, but is it still Tokyo, or did the Olympics get moved? Like, what your current understanding of what's happening with the Olympic Games and in terms of your own situation trying to prepare for this event?
As of right now, it is Tokyo 2021 that will commence July 25th, 2021. So it'll still be in Tokyo just next year.
Got it. Got it. And so that is your current focus, is just going all out in your training and preparation for that.
Absolutely.
Well,
and just being 1% better every day. That's really all you can do.
There it is. There it is. What an amazing conversation, Tianna. I look forward to staying connected to you. I'm going to purchase that alarm clock that you talked about earlier as soon as we jump off, and we'll definitely be in touch soon. But thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for listening to this special edition interview episode. If you enjoyed it, we'd love for you to subscribe and appreciate 5-star reviews as we continue our podcast journey. And if you're new to Restoic, stick around to learn more about us. Until next time.
What's a strong body without a strong mind? Today, student athletes report mental health and wellness as their number one challenge. Amplified by a demanding culture and social media, the pressure that athletes face has never been greater. And with the difference between skills, strength, and athleticism growing smaller, the world's elite athletes have begun journeying inwards to gain their competitive edge. Driven by sports science, Restoic is a resource for athletes at all levels who seek to train like the pros and optimize their performance through mental skills training, ranging from audio programs and meditations to our nationwide network of mental performance coaches. We serve mindful athletes by providing balance, bringing their energy and focus in alignment with their goals. Train the mind, the body will follow. Elevate your game at Restoic.com.
Remember, kid, there's heroes and there's legends. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die. Follow your heart, kid, and you never go wrong.